The thing that I think scares me most about fandoms is I think when you think of toxic, we turn to like hate. For example, in the One Piece fandom, Zoro stans versus Sanji stans. They very much hate one another. The emotion that probably scares me most within fandoms is actually the opposite. It's the love. It's the extreme passion and what that passion causes people to do. I feel like there's a cautionary tale about this in almost like every fantasy or sci-fi long-running TV series that you'll ever watch. I remember this episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer when one of the main characters cast a love spell on a girl, except it backfired spectacularly, and it turned out that it affected every other woman in the town.
So everyone loved him but the girl he wanted to?
Yes, that is the grand irony. But it got very violent very quickly because all of these women were now pretty much willing to kill each other to make sure that they got that guy that they were suddenly so passionate about. And I don't think that fantasy series is too far from what we see at like the really extreme ends of fandom culture.
I mean, I suppose bringing that back to anime, I'm not really in the Attack on Titan fandom, but I really like the series. I don't read the manga, so I don't know what the ending is, but I do follow the anime. And I'm pretty sure that
Should we spoil that Eren uses Gear 5th?
I know the ending. You want me to tell you?
No. 2 bananas at that point. But I think...
I can barely take one.
But I'm pretty sure a number of the voice actors of the Attack on Titan anime series have received death threats.
The
from
author
the
himself
fandom
also.
for different things. Yes, the mangaka as well received death threats because, you know, the ending didn't meet their expectations or whatever.
I mean, you can be sure for a series like One Piece and seeing how emotional things get every week and how emotional people get about our stuff. I don't even want to know what... I obviously don't think that Ichiro Oda, the author of One Piece, deals with that stuff himself, but whoever has to go through his mail, I'm sure there is a lot of stuff, really heavy, like death threats and stuff in there, for sure. I'd be surprised if not.
I don't know, like, to bring this back to the complete opposite of that, I think that the passion, the love, is always going to be stronger than the hate.
But
like,
the hate isn't that like such a strong thing?
Yeah, it's like
born
the
out
very
of it.
thin line between love and hate, that passion for, you know, this series that I had, you know, invested so much of my love and my time in, and you didn't, you didn't follow through with how it should have gone.
For that to happen, it needs to be a disappointing ending, right? Like how the world turned on Game of Thrones. That's what I assume happened with Attack on Titan, because people wouldn't stop whinging about it. I don't know the ending either.
Without spoiling anything, the ending was far more controversial than the ending of Game of Thrones. Because I think the people who thought that Game of Thrones had a pretty decent ending were clearly in the minority, while the people who thought that Game of Thrones had Attack on Titan had a bad ending. That was definitely a lot more balanced, and I would say that a lot of people were actually quite okay with the ending.
So it was like a civil war kind of
thing.
Like an LDR Mali conflict.
Well, if the ending is just basically a question of taste and whether you're happy with it or not, then I think it gets... I feel like Game of Thrones is more of an outlier there because it was genuinely, like, there was so much around this project where you could tell that the writers weren't invested in it anymore and so on and so forth. So that had a lot of, like, the messaging outward was also not on point, and I feel like that was fair to criticize. Well, I feel if you're just not happy with the line... the author of a story takes something, I feel like that's a lot less acceptable then.
And we also do see it almost with every chapter. If something happens that people don't like, they will say, you know, Oda, what are you doing with your story? Like, Oda, this is like, you know, you're a bad mangaka. So I don't think we even need to get to the ending. I also wouldn't be surprised if Oda has received death threats, but I do imagine it probably would be few. That's something that I've realized about the One Piece fandom though. So for the most part, I feel like there is a love for Oda and the really great recognition of his writing and his abilities.
But then isn't it always that people are, as you said, crazy in love with something until they flip on it? It's not like people would send death threats to the Attack on Titan voice actors because they didn't like it at the beginning. Like, they were probably the most invested ones in the first place, no?
Probably.
Yeah, I suppose so.
I was gonna say it can also work the opposite way, where you can develop counter-hate culture. which I would say applies to a series like, say, Bleach or My Hero Academia, where it just becomes like the popular cultural thing to hate on them.
I feel like someone did a video, I feel like 1 or 2 years ago I saw a very popular video on that on YouTube where it was kind of like the first wave on any piece of content is the people who like it. And then the next wave is the people who hate it because it gets popular. And then the third wave is the people who hate the haters.
The people who like it and then overrate it, they say it's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Then people get into it, they're like, this is all right. And then people get disappointed. They go, this is garbage.
Yeah.
So you get the hate, you get the likers defending, you get the haters.
You get the haters.
It's an endless cycle.
I think one really interesting thing that we have talked about a lot as well, I think off the podcast in general, is when love for a series turns into gatekeeping for said series. So in case you're not familiar with the term, it basically is when part of a fandom kind of referees the rest of opinions about said fandom and constitutes what makes a fair contribution to that fandom, what you should like, what's acceptable, and so on and so forth, where you should start.
It's another similarity to religion, because in these fandoms, figures rise that have that weird sort of power and sort of start to represent the opinions of other people in the fandom. Like a preacher of sorts. Like back in the day for One Piece, you guys are familiar with Greg, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Greg, probably like 10 to 12 years ago, was that figure for the Western world.
I think
because
we should
he was
probably, for the
Alkin.
audience, we should probably explain. I
Yeah.
think Greg I think he works with Shueisha, the publishing company.
I
for
believe he
Piece.
does work with Shueisha, which publishes One Piece. He's very famous for having a golden chopper hat, I believe. He once did a One Piece quiz as well. Did very well. Like a televised quiz, I should say.
Oh, that's cool.
He's met Oda, and he's pretty much reached the pinnacle of One Piece fandom. But like around 10 to 12 years ago, he was that sort of preacher figure for the Western world because he was our link to Japan, kind of like the guy who hears the word of God and then tells all of us followers. I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, I was like,
Thank you.
And-
Thank you.
And-
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and as you say, like fandoms create these mini like sub figures, I guess, of people who do have more. I guess in a way, you could count YouTubers in that sense as well, because we're also people who talk about a fandom and have a certain reach with our opinions. So,
According to Reddit, we have too much influence.
well, clearly we have too much influence.
I mean, it is an
interesting.
interesting point. Gonna start World War III.